somebody advised me, I think right before we moved, and said, never do more than one new thing a year. And that advice really made a lot of sense to me.
Welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast, where we journey down the path of the modern homesteading movement by sharing the stories and ideas of homesteaders around the world. So whether you're just thinking about someday living the homesteading lifestyle or have been for many years, we want to help everyone homestead today for a better tomorrow.
Hello, and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. I'm your host, Harold Thornborough, and on today's show we'll be having a chat with Heather Eby. Heather and her family homestead on 10 acres in Kansas, and she blogs all about it over at self-sufficiency and other assorted hijinks.wordpress.com. But before we get into that conversation, I wanted to share a couple other things with you. I want to tell you about an event that's going on April 6th through April 12th called the Homegrown Food Summit. This is a free online event that you really should sign up for, even if you can't watch all the sessions. I'll just play a little audio from Marjorie Wildcraft, who is putting this event on, an audio of her promoting this event.
Hi, my name is Marjorie Wildcraft, and I am the founder of the Grow Network and the creator of the best-selling video set Grow Your Own Groceries, which has over 300,000 copies being used in 30 countries around the world. I am very passionate about backyard food production. Do you have the level of health in your life that you want? Are you concerned about the food supply and all the chemicals and toxins in it? Would you like a deeply meaningful family activity that everybody can participate, from toddlers to teenagers to elders? Well, I'm hosting a free online summit from April 6th to 12th with 30 presentations by the world's leading experts in backyard food production. We are covering all different ways and techniques of growing, preparing, and preserving your own food. We have 8 different presentations on gardening methods. We have 5 different presentations on livestock, small livestock that you can do in your backyard. We have 3 presentations on different ways to preserve food, and we have 2 presentations on collecting and using rainwater, plus a whole lot more. If you register, and it's all free, as soon as you register, we'll get you a full list of the schedule and all the biographies of all our amazing presenters. And these presenters have been working on this. These are the leading research organizations and groups, been spending decades of their life working on developing ways for you and I to live more sustainably and have more local food and more backyard food production going on in our homes. Also, if you sign up, I'll give you 4 bonus ebooks just for free. We got one on how much land does it take to grow your own food. It's a useful question to know the answer to, isn't it? Another one which compares a lot of different ways to do chickens in your backyard. A third one on homemade shampoos, so you'll look good at any time. And a 4th one on seed saving. All you have to do for the free ebooks is just register. We'll be glad to give them to you. All of the 30 presentations, the 4 bonus ebooks can be yours. Just register. My name is Marjorie Wildcraft, and I'll see you at the Homegrown Food Summit from April 6th to April 12th.
You really do have to at least go check out some of the speakers that are at this event. Joel Salatin will be one of them, and we all admire that guy. But go in and check it out. You can find a link to it in the show notes for this podcast at smalltownhomestead.com/004. And, check it out and sign up. Don't miss it. Remember, it's free. And second, I wanted to say thanks for the huge response I had on the blog post I wrote a few days ago on mulberry trees. I had dozens of emails and hundreds of social media shares, and it was encouraging to see that kind of response. There was one person who emailed me that I was unable to reply to because it said your email account was over quota, and it wouldn't let my email go through. The email was about your son not being able to find mulberry trees to purchase because they were all out of stock. You know who you are, and if you fix that email and contact me again, I did have a few suggestions for you. So I didn't want anybody thinking that I just ignore their emails. I don't ignore emails. I try to always respond back to people when they email me. And on that note, if you want to sign up for the email list, go to smalltownhomestead.com, sign up for our email list, and you won't miss anything. All the blog posts and the podcasts, when we record them, I always send out an email, usually once a week, kind of just describing the latest that's going on at smalltownhomestead.com, and there'll be links for the blog posts and the podcasts in that email. So it's a good way to just stay up to date on what's happening around here. Well, with that, that's enough of that stuff. Let's go ahead and get to the conversation I had with Heather about her homestead. Heather Eby, welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, I've been through Kansas a few times in my life, and that doesn't sound like a Kansas accent. So I imagine there's a story here behind this.
Oh, well, unfortunately, it's not a very interesting one. I am from Australia, and I've lived here. Wow, it's getting actually to be about half my life now. I came over as a young adult and got married, and I've pretty much been here ever since. I've been back a couple of times, and actually, when I say a couple of times, I went back for 6 years, split into 2 lots of 3, and both of my kids were born over there, but they've pretty much been raised here, and I've lived here now for a long time, been a Kansan for about 15 years.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, what got you into homesteading?
Well, I feel like I've sort of always, that's just the way I've always leaned. My mother was I wouldn't really call her a hippie, but definitely an herbalist, and we were treated with comfrey ointments for just about everything, and horehound candy if we had a cough, and things like that. And as a teenager, I subscribed to a magazine they have in Australia called Grassroots, which I would say is sort of an Aussie version of Mother Earth News magazine here. And so I sort of, I'd read this magazine, and I'd have these dreams that I was going to live on a really backwoods rural area where it was only accessible by horse and cart, and I'd chop my own wood and grow all of my own food, and once a week take the horse and cart into town to barter for the things I didn't raise. And it was very idealistic teenage dreaming, but then I spent quite a few years living in the city, going to college, raising my kids when they were little, and always had a few chickens in the backyard, and always had a veggie garden, but sometimes a few herbs and a planter on the front porch. But then about 3 years ago, I was very fortunate that my husband and I had the opportunity to move out of the city and onto our little acreage here, and we've just sort of slow leaps and bounds in the last 3 years. Somebody advised me, I think right before we moved, and said, never do more than one new thing a year. And that advice really made a lot of sense to me. I thought,
sure.
I can see trying to jump in and do everything at once, and then getting so overwhelmed because I don't know half of it. I'm still learning some of it. So what we did the first year is we expanded from the dozen chickens, or dozen hens actually, that we were allowed to have in the city, and increased them, added some turkeys and ducks, and got roosters for the first time and started hatching our own. And so our first year was really just expanding on what we had already done. And the second year we added sheep, and that was primarily because growing up in Australia, we eat lamb like you eat beef here. It's actually the cheap meat. And here, at least in Kansas, you just never see it for sale in the stores. Right. And if you go to a restaurant, the rack of lamb is the most expensive item on the menu. And that just, since I grew up with it being the cheap meat, I couldn't really stomach paying the prices that it was costing here. So I told my husband, who had never even tasted lamb, that I wanted to start raising our own. And we started with 6 little lambs, and that was actually quite the adventure, because after discussing for several weeks, should we or shouldn't we get lambs, one morning on Craigslist I saw an ad, and this guy had these 6 for sale, and So I went and I said, well, what do you think? Should we get some sheep? And he said, okay. So we went in my PT Cruiser. Came back with that. It was an hour drive each way. So we had 6 lambs in a PT Cruiser for an hour, and the tarp, let's just say, was not adequate for the job. So I can still, on a warm day, smell the sheep in the back of my car. But
I bet you had a lot of stairs where you were going down the road, too.
Oh, yes, especially going through the drive-thru to get a drink on the way back.
Oh, wow. Oh.
But then we got them home, and we cobbled together a quick little pen for them in the dark with a storm approaching, and we finally got the last. We were using some livestock panels, and we got the last panel secured, and we sat back and we watched them graze for a minute, and we went in to get out of the storm. And the next morning, I was woken by my husband yelling, "Oh, crap!" And I ran to see what the problem was, and he was watching them disappear out the front gate.
Oh, no.
It turned out that in the dark, one of the panels had not been secured at the bottom, and when they leaned against it, it just let them all out. So we spent our first day as sheep farmers chasing the sheep up and down the road. Never could quite convince them to turn back in the driveway, and eventually watched them sail over a fence like they were little deer and disappear altogether off into open fields. But we walked for hours and never caught another glimpse of them. So we thought we had...
So there's a wild sheep population somewhere in Kansas.
Well, we felt like real failures as sheep mom and thinking we just bought some really expensive coyote food. But woke up the next morning to hear one of our dogs barking, and she just really never barks. So something's up when she barks, and we looked out to find the 6 of them huddled under our bedroom window.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, there's that poem about leave them alone and they'll come home, but they've been on our property all of 12 hours before they disappeared. Honestly, 2 years later, I'm still amazed that they found their way home and
yeah, no kidding. My dogs aren't even smart enough to find their way home when they get out, so I'm surprised too. That's neat.
Yeah. So, needless to say, we did secure the pen properly, and we then got them. We've got a nice 7-acre pasture that they live in now, and it's all been good ever since then. But we had to wait a few months to try our first lamb, but luckily the family all enjoys it, so we've been doing that ever since, and even added a few goats as well.
And you're able to keep those in, though, huh? The goats.
Well, most of the time.
Yeah, because I grew up with goats, and I know that they can get out of just about anything.
Yeah, they're pretty good at it. The doe actually isn't too bad. The billy, or the buck, or the billy, whatever you want to call him, he is kind of always looking for a way out. I think we've got him now. He hasn't been out for quite a while unless we've let him out. But no, the doe is really pretty good, and we just had the buck and the doe until 9 weeks ago when they had little twin bucklings born, and the bucklings, of course, are now wethers and will one day be the first goat meat that we taste. So kind of looking forward to trying that.
Yeah, it's amazing how that's a really popular meat in the whole world except for here.
Right. I did read one time that it's actually the most widely eaten meat around the world out of everything, which surprised me too, because most people here haven't even tasted it.
Right.
But so anyway, we will we will make that a few less by the end of the year, I hope.
Yeah. And you've also now, I was reading on your blog, you've kind of gotten into dairy cows now, right?
Yes, that is a very new venture, and I think it surprised us pretty much as much as anybody who knows us, because the one thing we had always said was we're not going to do dairy. We wanted the freedom to be able to travel a little bit, didn't want to be tied to milking, and so we've done meat animals. We don't milk the goat, we don't milk the sheep, we've just done all meat animals, and then actually just right after Christmas, my neighbour our next door neighbour, with whom we've become quite good friends, told us that they were thinking about getting a dairy cow. And I said, oh, well, that'll be nice. And if you have any excess milk, I'll be happy to buy it from you. And so a few weeks went by, and she continued on with her plans to get the dairy cow, and that turned into a couple of bred heifers. And then one day I got a call saying, have you ever thought about getting a dairy cow? I said, no, I really haven't. I just don't want to go that way. And long story short, we now have dairy cows. She talked us into it, and it's a really interesting arrangement, I think, because what we're doing is a cooperative with our neighbours. We co-own the cows, we share the expenses, we share the responsibilities, and then we share the milk. And it's actually working out beautifully. We have one cow with her calf, the 2 bred heifers that she was going to get, and then a steer that we are going to send to butcher here in a few months. And so we only have the one cow that's in milk right now, and we're doing what's called shared milking, where the cow raises her calf, and we share the milk with the calf. So the way that works for us is around 8 o'clock in the morning, I go over, and between us we herd the calf out, and she's pretty used now to leading him on. And so we herd her out into another area where she spends about 6 hours, and during that time the milk, of course, builds up in the cow, and then we go and milk the cow. We usually just milk 1/4 all the way out, and maybe just a little off a couple of the other quarters. We want to leave enough for the calf that she won't go hungry, and we put the calf back on her, and the calf's been with her mum for the rest of the 24-hour period. And then because we're sharing the milking then with another family, I only have to milk every other day. So, where I've always imagined dairy being twice a day milking, instead I'm doing one milking every other day, and I still have freedom and flexibility. And, if there's a day that I can't do it, it's really easy to just call her and say, hey, you want some extra milk? Could you milk for me today? And
well, that's a great arrangement. Yeah.
It really is working out really great. And the nice thing is, unlike with some of the other animals where when you travel you have to bring somebody in and teach them the chores, teach them what needs to be done, with the cows we both know what needs to be done, and so there just isn't any issue at all if one person needs to take some time off.
Sure. Well, yeah, and things are going to, of course, it's being springtime, things always get a little bit busier on the homestead. You got a garden to get ready and, other things going on. So, yeah.
Yep.
It's nice to have some help there. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cows will get busier later in the year. We've got one of the heifers is due in mid-June and the other the end of July, and after that we'll be trying to train them to be milked as well. So that the cows will get busy, but right now it's not a huge commitment of time. So, yeah, and now I'm having to learn how to do all the dairy products that I never thought I'd be learning to do, like make butter and yogurt, and just tasted our first cheddar cheese last night that I made last week.
Oh,
so.
Wow. Yeah, that's fun. I mean, you're doing all that new stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, I know when I first just got into just doing anything in homesteading, I mean, every little thing you learn is just something new, and it's exciting, and, it's just fun, for a while.
Yeah.
Until it becomes a chore.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I was reading on your blog. You've had some. You've been blogging for a couple of years, I've seen, and I was just kind of scrolling through there, and pictures are a great thing in a blog, because there was one that caught my eye right off the bat, and it was a couple of years ago, and it's someone holding a black snake. I want to hear this story, because I caught my eye, and then I read a little bit of it, and I was like, oh, I got to ask you about this. So.
Well, it was a summer night. I want to say July, August, one of those really hot summer nights. And my husband and I had been out all evening. We came home, I think it was about 11 o'clock at night. And I usually just go down. We have an auto door on the chicken coop, but I usually go down and just check that everybody made it in. Just don't want any predators coming around in the middle of the night. And I was surprised when I got down there to find that all of the ducks, and at that point that we'd hatched a lot, we had 20 or 30 ducks. They were all sitting outside, which was really unusual. So I opened the people door. I was going to herd them in because, of course, the auto door had already closed hours before. And when I looked in with the flashlight, I saw this snake. The actual chicken coop part of the building is 10 by 10. Mm-hmm. And its head was in one corner. Its body went the entire way down one side and then turned the corner and went a couple of feet. So I'd say it was about a 12-foot long black snake.
It looked really big.
It looked really big in the coop, too. And the scary thing was I had a couple of chicks that were about 3 weeks old, and its head was only inches from one of the chicks. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's about to grab that chick. I've got to do something. So I ran in, I grabbed it by the tail, and I backed out of there. It, of course, turned around. It was kind of hissing and not very happy about being grabbed. And I wasn't too concerned about being bitten, although that was on my mind. But mostly I just wanted to make sure that I guess I became the mother hen, and the protective mode kicked in, and so you're not going to get my chick. So, I dragged it on out of there and kind of half carried, half dragged it up to the house and yelled for my husband to come and take a look. And he's the one who took that photo that you saw on the blog. And then, there was well, what do we do now? I'm a snake. I would have to say I'm kind of a snake lover. I believe that they are truly beneficial to have on the homestead. They are good for rodent patrol and all the rest.
Yeah.
I didn't want to kill it. I just didn't want it eating my birds either. So what I ended up doing was carrying it across the street to a big open field that we have there. And unfortunately, it was throwing up or regurgitating the entire way. It had eaten a lot of eggs. It had not actually eaten any of the chicks, but it had eaten a lot of the eggs. I had eggs under various broody hens at the time, and the next morning I discovered that they were pretty much all gone. So it was regurgitating them all the way up. I released it in the field across the street, and I've never seen it since. So apparently it got the message it wasn't welcome.
Yeah, evidently. I seen that, and that caught my eye, and I thought, wow, that's a really big snake. And then for you just to grab it like that, I thought that was pretty funny, too, because I don't think my wife would grab a snake. I'm not so sure I would if there was a shovel or something I could use instead. Oh, that's a good story. Yeah, you have a lot of blog posts. You write quite a bit, just daily, or not really daily, but I mean you just journal what's going on your homestead quite a bit, huh?
Well, we do. We actually started the blog mostly for ourselves. We did have a few times, like when with the sheep, going to pick them up in the PT Cruiser, and we were telling a friend, and they said, "Oh, you should have a blog. You should write about that." And I thought about it later, and I thought, memories do fade. It would be fun to just note that down so that later we can go back on it and laugh about some of the mishaps that happen. And so I have tried to keep it up. I usually try and post a new one about once a week, and just little bits of what we're doing. It's very seasonal when we're in the veggie garden. There might be recipes for what we're doing with all the, you bring in all those bucket loads of tomatoes every day, and recipes for what we're doing with them and things like that. And it's more just to document it for ourselves. But we've had a few people subscribe over the years, and if they enjoy it too, then the more the merrier.
Yeah, I'm sure it encourages people to try things and they see what you're doing. It's like, I want to try that too, So I think it's good. I always encourage blogging. I just think it's a great thing to do, and a lot of people are doing it, but they're popular for a reason, because people are encouraged, they're inspired by them, and they love the stories, So it's
right. Well, and I love to read blogs myself for the same reason, I think, but. Especially when I try and read a lot, I research a lot. Anytime we're starting a new venture, I try and read a lot about it. But there's a difference between an article written by a professional who's doing it when all the conditions are perfect, and somebody like me who's just done a little homestead and conditions may not be perfect. I like hearing the real life experiences that people have had, and so I guess that's why I like to write the blog posts as well. Is sometimes sometimes you try something and it doesn't work. And that's useful information as much as the things that did work. So.
Right. Yeah, it's nice to share the failures too and help somebody else out and try that as well. So now you're on 10 acres, right, in Kansas? Okay. So is it all farm? Is it woods? Is it all field? You got it separated for like the garden and animals. How you got that laid out?
Yeah, well, it's Kansas. We dream of woods. It's definitely prairie. Our the way the acreage is divided up, it's long and narrow. It's actually a 1/4 mile long, and so whatever the width is to make it 10 acres, then it's a 1/4 mile long. And the front 3 is our house and surrounds, but it also includes where we have the chicken coop and yard and our veggie garden. And our orchard, which is currently 1 apple tree, but it produces so many apples every year that it almost counts as an orchard all by itself. And then there's a fence dividing the front 3 from the 7-acre pasture, and that is where the sheep and goats live. And we are very fortunate that our west side boundary is a hedgerow of trees that I think are fairly native to Kansas. So I don't know how often they grow in other parts of the country. They're actually Osage orange, but they're known as hedge apples. They produce these enormous big hedge apples that horses like to eat. But I say we're fortunate because it's on our west boundary, so it casts shade in the summer from the hot west sun so that, and the chicken yard is built right inside that, so we get a lot of shade in the chicken yard for a lot of the day. So that's worked out really well for us. But aside from that hedgerow of trees, there aren't a whole lot of other trees on the property. The pasture is mainly just grass with a big pond in the middle of it, which, again, we're very fortunate that the former owners of the property had dug the pond.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a nice feature to have on your homestead for sure.
Yeah.
Well, like what kind of a gardening area do you have? I mean, you got a really good sized garden, I would imagine? And
I think it's a decent size. It's certainly a decent size when I'm trying to weed it. It's the actual garden area is about 50 feet long by about 16 feet wide.
Okay.
And I have that divided up into 4-foot wide beds with 2-foot wide walkways in between them. So there are 7 beds with the walkways in between, and that works out. Some people, I've read a lot about this, and a lot of people say, 4 feet wide is too wide, but I found it to be a good width because I can reach in 2 feet, and so each bed is accessible on both sides, and so as long as I can reach in 2 feet, I can weed the entire bed without actually having to walk on it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do too. They got the 4 foot wide and with the pathways in between. Yeah, it works out real well for me as well.
Yeah. I was really surprised when I read recently where somebody said, you don't want to go wider than 3 feet, but anyway, I'm not very tall. I don't have super long arms, but I haven't had any problem leaning that far. So, anyway, so I actually don't grow some of the things that most people do seem to. I don't grow sweet corn. What I try to do is grow the things, I guess it's getting the most bang for my buck, which is probably a holdover from when I gardened in the city and had a very small space to garden, so I had to make the most of every square inch I had. I try to only grow the things that are going to continually produce instead of being a one-off. So sweet corn, really takes up quite a bit of space, and you get 2 ears of corn and then it's done. Whereas tomatoes take up even more space, but they continually produce for several months. So generally I grow a lot of different varieties of tomatoes and peppers. We love hot peppers, so I'm always looking for the hottest of the hot peppers I can grow. We do have 1 row dedicated to potatoes, and then we grow a lot of salad greens. But when I say salad greens, we actually don't grow lettuce because, once again, it is something that you grow, and then once you cut the head of lettuce, then it's sort of done. So we grow greens like kale, Swiss chard, collards, mustard greens. And I try spinach every year. I've never successfully grown spinach, but I guess I'll try again this year. And anyway, and we use those greens that are more continually producing in our salads. So
yeah, I find I have better luck with the loose leaf lettuce. That way you can just kind of cut the outer leaves off of it, and it continues to grow, and you can just kind of leave it alone and not pull it all at once. That works pretty good. But then during the summer, of course, you really can't grow it. It's more of a spring and then fall.
Okay, well, that's a good tip. I might have to try that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't. I guess wasn't even really aware there was a loose leaf lettuce that you could grow that way. So.
Yeah,
see, I learned something from you.
Well, there's just all kinds of tricks. Yeah, we have pretty. I don't know. It's probably just a weather difference too. The spinach grows pretty well. I'm in Indiana, and the spinach grows pretty well here. So yeah, it could be just some weather differences and some might make a difference on lettuces.
I may need to try some different seed. I'm probably using the same seed packet because I tend to do that. I tend to get seed packets and then I just keep using them until they stop germinating. So maybe I just need to try a different variety. But I've tried it every year, and I always get them to come up in the little starter pots, and then I plant them out, and then after I plant them out, nothing really happens to them. So.
Well, it sounds like you're making up for it with the other greens there. You got plenty for a salad.
Yeah, the caterpillars certainly think so. We are 100% organic, and our only method of pest control is to sit out there with a peanut butter jar and pick the bugs off it.
Yeah,
and that takes quite a bit of time, really. I usually spend an hour or two every day doing that and collect them and then carry them out to because we have the veggie garden fenced off to keep the chickens out because they like a good salad as much as we do.
Yeah, you wouldn't have a garden if you didn't, yeah.
Yeah. And so then I carry my peanut butter jar full of creepy crawlies out and feed them to them, and they get very excited to see the peanut butter jar coming.
Oh, yeah, they would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you growing your potatoes like it just in mounds in the dirt, or are you doing anything special growing those?
Well, we are growing them in the ground. What we did last year that worked fairly well. We didn't probably have any record-breaking yields, but we were satisfied. Was we just planted them directly in the ground, and then we did just pile a little over them as the season progressed. And when the leaves were coming up, we would just sort of pile some more on top of them, and that worked pretty well. This year we have a much thicker layer of mulch than we did last year, so I'm hoping that they'll do a little bit better this year even than last year. But
yeah, I'm trying something new this year. I'm setting up some cages. I was kind of looking on YouTube and seen this setup where you just take some straw and put it around the inside of a round, take some fencing and just put it in a circle, and then kind of push straw up against the edges and then fill the center up with dirt, and then every few inches you plant a circle of potatoes and just all the way up, and you go ahead and fill it all the way up, and you don't have to put any more dirt in it or anything, and then it just grows out the side of the wire, through the fence, through the year. And that looks like a pretty neat setup. And when you're done, you just go out there and rock the cage and then tip it over and kind of shuffle through the mess and find your potatoes.
Yeah. That does sound like an easy way when it comes to harvesting for sure. Because I know with them in the ground, when you go to dig them, it seems like you always miss them.
Yeah, I haven't. This will be the first year I'm trying that, but it looked, just a few videos and stuff I watched on YouTube, looked like it worked pretty well. So I'm eager to try it.
Okay, well, yeah, you'll have to keep us posted on that.
Yeah,
I'm certainly willing to change methods if there's something that works better.
Yeah, look like it might try. Yeah, because I haven't had a lot of, like you say, that when you're growing them in the ground, I mean, it definitely has to be soft, dirt and with some mulch, and you keep piling it up. And it does take some work. I mean, you can get a decent harvest, but it is a lot of work doing it that way. So just trying to find a better way, like you, I guess. We're always experimenting and seeing what we can do.
Always looking for something better. Yeah. One thing I did learn last year, which I don't know, I guess it just I'd never realized this before, is that potatoes really don't dig down. A lot of other, like the tomatoes, they'll develop a pretty deep root system, but the potatoes, where you plant them, they'll go horizontally, but not down.
Yeah, they grow up. Regular potatoes grow up. Sweet potatoes will grow down, but
okay.
Yeah, the regular potatoes grow up. Yeah, Yeah, that's that's why you have to do the mound system with them, so keep
Right.
giving them dirt to spread out in and stuff. And yeah, they're not the funnest crop to grow, but but it's one of those crops that they're not expensive in the store, but they're they consider just one of the really bad ones for chemicals and stuff being sprayed on them. So it's really good to grow those yourself, and get away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sounds like you got quite a bit going on there. I mean, I was reading that you're diving in, doing a lot of canning, dehydrating, of course, making your dairy products, and so it sounds like you're just taking on all kinds of new stuff this year.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it does feel a little overwhelming. Like I said earlier, you pull in all those buckets of tomatoes when they're right at that ripening season, and then I sit there and I look at these buckets of tomatoes, but there's no rest. You can't leave them unless you want them to rot. So as soon as I pull them in, then I have to start washing and cutting and turning them into salsa and pasta sauce and this year I might try and make some ketchup. I've never done that before.
Yeah, I've seen some recipes for that as well. I was kind of interested in that too. I've seen a few people posting recipes recently and some blogs and stuff. So yeah, that might be something I'm going to even get into. I didn't have a very good tomato crop last year. We got some blight problems around here. It sounds like a lot of people had that problem. I don't know if it was out your area or not, but it hit us pretty hard around here. And
I think we got lucky because I do remember reading on a couple of Facebook groups or forums where people were experiencing a lot of blight. But around here, I guess we got the right rain at the right time because we did not have. I actually had a really good haul last year. I put up something like, I don't know, I think about 100 pints of various tomato-related, tomato-based things.
Yeah.
So no, we did not have that last year, but every year is different, and you never know with the weather conditions what you can get.
When you get the temperatures and the rain and everything plays just right, it can definitely hit you. So yeah, that's something we dealt with. So it affected our tomato crop last year. Everything else done really well. We have the cucumbers. I don't know if you grow cucumbers, but we had cucumbers last year, and I've never seen so many cucumbers in my life.
Oh wow! No, I haven't grown cucumbers. My neighbor does, and she's very generous and shares them with us. So.
I made a lot of pickles last year, so I've been giving away pickles all winter. So
yeah, yum.
It worked out good. But you said you kind of taking on one new thing a year. It sounds like you've sometimes taken on more. But what's in your future plans for your homestead? I mean, you got some other animals you're looking into, or other things to grow, or maybe expand that, maybe doubling that orchard size by planting another tree or something.
Yeah. Actually, we do talk often about adding some more fruit trees, and it sounds really good until the point where the one apple tree, like I said, it has produced so well the last 2 years that at that point I kind of think, why do I want more fruit to have to deal with? This is, I have to make all this applesauce so fast.
I think variety. You got different trees.
Yeah. Actually, it would be nice to stretch it out a little bit because with ours, a very early maturing apple. They usually ripe about July, and I have about 4 weeks where I'm going crazy trying to deal with all the apples, and then we're done before a lot of other varieties are even started. So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that probably would be good. But for the future, there's a couple of things we've talked about other than adding more fruit trees, one of which is bees. I've never done it, and who doesn't like honey? But actually the thing that's stopping me, and you'll probably laugh at me, and it's one of my little quirks, I feel guilty stealing the honey from the bees. I feel like they work so hard their whole lives to gather all this pollen and turn it into honey so that the hive will have honey to eat over the winter, and then we go and steal it all. And so I just don't know if I can live with the guilt. So
yeah, there is I mean, from what I understand, I don't raise bees. It is something also that I would like to get into in the future. But from what I understand, I mean, you can be greedy and take too much from them, and then they don't have enough to feed on through the winter. But from what I understand, though, if you don't take it, they'll actually move on. They actually need you to take some of it to stay where they're at. Otherwise, it causes them some problems, and they have to go find another place to live.
Well, that is interesting. I might have to read up a bit more about that.
Yeah,
then.
because they'll actually like split the hive. You have to like continually split the hive and stuff because they'll get so populated and they'll get so much honey. Just from the stuff I've read, like I said, I'm no expert on it because I don't even raise them. And someone might listen to this podcast and send me an email and say you're wrong about that. But I've read a few things, and it sounds like that that it's good to take some of it, but I guess you could take too much because, like I said, that is their food, and for the winter time. And
yeah,
but yeah,
okay.
I think actually it may
know.
make you feel less guilty though. So you might be helping.
Yeah,
you got to think about helping the bees that way.
Helping the bees, yes, absolutely. And the other thing that we have talked about doing, and I would say I'm probably more interested than my husband, is pigs. I've never raised pigs, and I think I would probably really enjoy the pigs themselves. I think I'd like them, and of course I've had some homegrown pork, and it's just night and day different than anything you can buy in the store normally. So, it's got that going for it. The only hesitation I have, well, I guess there's two hesitations I have with pigs. One is their natural rooting behavior. I just, I've read horror stories about them digging and rooting and turning your whatever space you give them into just a mud patch. And that isn't terribly appealing, although hopefully the area would recover. But the other thing that we hesitate is that the beauty of the sheep and the goats is they practically raise themselves. They live out on the pasture, they eat grass. We don't have to supplement them a whole lot. I give them a very small scoop of grain every night just to keep them coming in and keep them friendly, and they just think of me as the grain lady. But actually even that is mostly just during pregnancy and lactation, and the rest of the year they don't even get that. And so they grow fat just on grass. We don't have to do much for them other than make sure they have clean, fresh water all the time. Whereas pigs, you have to feed them. And we don't have a steady supply of food, so we'd have to go out and buy the feed for them. And so then we're kind of going, well, by the time you buy the feed and buy the pigs and then buy the feed and then pay for the processing, are you really getting cheap meat or are you just getting better meat? So I guess that's what you have to decide.
And there's if you got enough land and from what I understand, I've had pigs, on and off throughout my whole life. We've raised some pigs here and there, but never in this way. And I've read a lot of people and heard from a lot of people that do it this way, and that's just paddock shifting them, having several areas that you constantly are moving them into. That way you can let the ground recover behind them, and they do less damage that way. And, I don't know how much land you would have dedicated for something like that, but if you don't have too many of them and you're able to move them on different, areas, I think that they can, that it works pretty well. But really all animals, really, for that matter, it's a good, practice to kind of paddock shift them around if you got a small area for a lot of animals,
Yeah, that's true. And actually, that is one thing that we are going to change up about our sheep operation this year. And when I say operation, we only have a small number of sheep, but we are planning on starting rotational grazing with them for parasite control. So we're going to get some of that electronet sensing and use it to create much smaller areas for them and then move them every 4 days, which my husband worked out with the space we have and the size of the electronetting fence, that if we move them every 4 days, by the time they get back onto a place where they've been before, the parasites won't still be around. They'll have, I guess their life cycle on the blade of grass will be over. So, so I suppose if you maybe followed the sheep with the pigs or something, maybe that. Yeah, and then
a lot of people alternate different kinds of animals. Or if they have cattle, and they'll run like maybe chickens behind them in cages, and and you have chicken tractors, and you put a few chickens for meat chickens, and run those behind them, and that works pretty well from what I've read. Joel Salatin's big on that. I don't know if you know much about him, but he talks a lot about that, running the chicken tractors through the fields, and then you get a more natural grass-fed animal that way. So but that is good plans. It sounds like you guys know what you're you got a plan there for with the netting and moving them around. That's part of your future there. I mean, that's what you're going to be doing, and I think that's a good practice. So that's real good. I think you need to get the bees up.
Well, it's going to take a little bit to get it set up, and right now we're actually at the stage where we're just researching all the different. My brain fries on this stuff, but the energizers and the all of that stuff. He's better at that than me, fortunately. So he's actually the one doing the research on that and just reporting back every now and then. And somebody gave me a tip about using car batteries instead of solar panels to power them, which he really liked that idea as well. So we're looking at hopefully getting that set up before the end of April, so that we can get them out there and start rotating them. And one of the reasons I say we have stayed small on our sheep is we have 7 acres. And we did read when we first started in sheep that in this area you can run about 5 head per acre. So with 7 acres, that should allow us about 35 head. But what we're trying to do is grow hay on it as well, so that the sheep are pretty much self-sufficient. So we grow hay, and so we've stayed low. We're staying well below the 35 right now. I think we have. We've got seven adults and the lambs that they've got at foot that won't be around forever. And so we let them graze it, but up until now at least, we're in a drought right now, so this year could be different. But the past 2 years we've been able to cut enough hay to feed them over the winter. So we haven't had to actually buy any feed for the sheep other than that scoop of grain that they get during pregnancy. So So that's the reason we're staying small on the sheep, but it also will make it possible, I think, to rotationally graze, and they'll still have enough to eat in the little area that they've got the electro-net fence in.
Now, do you sell any of the sheep as well, or is it just for your own use?
Well, I have a hard time butchering the females, I have to say. They to me are more valuable because they can be future breeders. So last year, we only had 2 lambs, actually. We did not have as many adults then as we do now. And we had 1 ram lamb who went to butcher. We had 1 ewe lamb who we kept and is now one of our adults. This year, I have sold the ewe lambs. Actually, just word of mouth. I didn't even really have to advertise, but people would hear that I had lambs and call me up and say, hey, are you by any chance going to be selling them? So all of the ewe lambs were pre-sold by the time they were a week or 2 old, and the males then we are raising to go to butcher. So, but yeah, that's about the only sales we do. I am not somebody. I hate sales. I don't like to have to wheel and deal and advertise and do all that. So,
well, you're in it to feed your family. It's not really commercial business for you, all right? Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Yeah. So it worked out really well this year that I got them all sold without having to do any of that. I was just able to have people hear that I had them and reserve them, and then I just tell them, okay, it's weaning time when you want to pick them up. So.
Now I mentioned earlier about your chickens. Now are all your chickens layers, or do you have meat chickens as well, or?
Oh, actually, I'm glad you asked that question because you touched on one of my favorite subjects. I don't really like the commercial meat chicken, the broilers that are sort of, engineered a little bit to grow way too fast. And so what I have I focus primarily on 2 breeds. They are heritage breeds, Barred Rocks and New Hampshire Reds. But I know people are cringing, going, oh, Barred Rocks, I've had them, and they're awful. These are not your hatchery Barred Rocks. I got some really good breeder stock from a guy who happens to live 2 hours from me, but has some degree of fame throughout the country. His name is Frank Reese, and he runs Good Shepherd Poultry Ranch. up right here in Kansas. And so I made a visit up to see him a couple of years ago and picked up some breeder quality hens and a couple of roosters from him. And they're the base of my stock. Now, what I like about them is compared to the hatchery barred rocks, they're huge. The barred rocks have this beautiful, what they call zebra barring, where it's very, very clean lines. And the New Hampshire reds are just this brilliant orange. And they're all just very docile, calm, friendly birds. They're not bullies like some of the hatchery birds can be.
Mm-hmm, right.
They grow to butcher size in about 16 weeks. And so it's not like your broilers where, 6 to 8 weeks and you're already butchering them.
Yeah, they're huge.
But I don't have them in tractors and having to do all that labor. What I have is I actually have just one coop, and all of my birds live in one coop. And everybody free ranges together, and they actually have access to the entire 10 acres. They realistically only use about the front 3 of it, but they're allowed to go anywhere, and they eat all the grass and bugs they can find, and they sunbathe and they dust bathe, and they just do all the things that birds should do. And so they kind of raise themselves. I just put a note on my calendar that this group is 16 weeks old on this date, and on that date I round them up and butcher them. And that's really just because I don't want to lose track of them and end up feeding them a lot longer when I didn't need to. But they, for the most part, raise themselves. So I don't really have any extra work, but I still have the meat. And it's, I think if you're used to eating an 8-week-old Cornish cross, you probably would notice a difference with this. This is what we're used to, and we find it really good meat.
It's better for sure. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have the size, but for sure, definitely a better, more of the dark meat and less of the white for sure. But still a good bird. Absolutely. What about your ducks? Now, you doing egg production with those, or is it?
Well, I got Muscovies because I had read that they are a good meat bird. They're good mothers, and they're good layers. I'd have to say the first 2 of those things are accurate. In other parts of the country, I understand that they do lay for a lot longer. Here in Kansas, we find I actually got my first duck egg today. So here it is, April 1st. Got my first duck egg. They'll lay until about, I think, like August, September, maybe, if I'm lucky, and then they're done.
Maybe 100 days, yeah.
Yeah, so as far as being good layers, I would have to disagree with that, at least from my area. But they are a good meat bird. With them, I actually mark the calendar at 14 weeks. They grow from a duckling out of the egg to an enormous bird in 14 weeks. And they, if you like duck, it's good meat. We do really like duck. The only problem I have with ducks is they're messy. I know everybody says that, but this time of year they don't bother me. But winter comes and it pretty much we'll get weeks at a time where it's below freezing around the clock, and then a lot of other days where it freezes at night. So the only way I can provide water for them is with a heated dog water bowl. And of course my bigot out there freezes, so I have to hold the water down from the house. So there's nothing more frustrating. I fill up a old milk carton with a gallon of water, and I carry it down there, and I fill up the heated dog water bowl, and I turn around, I go and check for eggs or something, and I hear splish, splash, splish, splash, and I look around, and there's a duck bathing in the water.
Yeah. And
splashing it all out where it instantly freezes for me to flip over the next time I'm going down there. So every winter I say, this is my last year with ducks. I am not putting up with this again.
But the meat's so good, right?
The meat is good. It is. And then right about the time I'm really cursing, we'll have ducks for dinner, and my husband will say, I'm really going to miss the ducks.
Now, do they have access to your pond, or do you not let them there?
No, they are free to fly down there. Muscovies are good flyers. But what's interesting, the first year we were here, they all and that was back when we had 20 or 30 of them that summer. They would all fly down there every day, and they would spend a lot of the day down there, and then they'd get hungry, and they'd sort of waddle. For some reason, they'd fly down but walk back, so they'd waddle all the way back up, and they'd come and refill.
It's
kind
of like me when I go into a restaurant. I kind of fly in, but then I kind of waddle out.
Yeah, there you go. And actually, that became a problem. We didn't get nearly as much meat that first year as we should have, because we had a fox that was visiting, and about every 2 or 3 days, one fewer, because the ducks were actually trying to sleep on the pond at night, but the fox was apparently going out in the pond and getting them, or scaring them to the edge and getting them, or whatever he was doing. And about every 2 or 3 days, one fewer duck would waddle back up. And we got down to the point, I think we had 6 by the end of the fall, and we hadn't eaten any of them, which was a bit frustrating. And I don't know what became of that fox. I think somebody got him. I'd heard that a neighbor on the other side of the hedge was losing chickens to it as well, and had a trap out, and suddenly one day we stopped losing ducks to it. So I think the neighbor must have somehow got the fox. But we've been pretty lucky when it comes to predators. I know a lot of people who keep poultry have a lot of predator issues. We had one spectacular fox incident 3 weeks after we moved here.
Yeah, I've seen that on your blog as well. You had like a month or two there where you had you had the snake, you had the fox, you had a coyote, didn't you, all at once, kind of?
Yeah, we had, yes, definitely. The coyote got one of those 6 little lambs, and the fox got, at that time, it took a third of my flock in about an hour.
Wow.
There were just dead bodies everywhere. It was horrible. But that fox's life ended about 24 hours after that attack, when he returned, which I had sort of predicted he would, and I was laying in wait for him with a 22, and that was pretty much the end of that first fox. And then we had the other one that the following year was taking the ducks off our pond at night, but it never came up closer than that. It was pretty content to just eat the ducks that slept on the pond. And the 6 that we were left with at the end of the year were the 6 that had realized that it wasn't safe down at the pond and started sleeping in the coop.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, apparently those 6 told all the others that it's not safe at the pond, because nobody goes down there anymore.
Put the word out, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty neat. You got quite a homestead. Yeah, I enjoyed listening to just everything you got going on. It sounds like you just got a great place there. You just got a lot of stuff happening, and it sounds like you got a few things in the future there that you're going to be getting into. And I'm looking forward to reading about it on your blog. I really enjoyed reading your blog. You got a lot of good stuff on there.
Well, thank you very much, Harold. I appreciate that. And yeah, we really are happy here. It's realizing a dream, and sometimes that can go south on you. Sometimes you achieve the dream and then go, well, this isn't as fun as I thought it was. But
and nothing ever is, but yeah, it's worth it though. I think it's worth it though. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. In our case, we have just really, we're just so happy out here, and we just feel so thankful every day that we had the opportunity to move here and try this, and I would really encourage anyone who thinks they want to try it. You don't have to move to an acreage to do it. You can do it right in your backyard.
Yeah, you were doing it. You had a small homestead even when you were in town. It sounded like you had some chickens.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let you point people to your blog if you want to. What is it's I'll let you say it. What's the title of it?
Okay. Yeah, it is a bit of a mouthful. It's self-sufficiency and assorted hijinks. All one word, so
okay.
It's a really long word.
I'll put it in the show notes so nobody has to remember all that.
Oh, and I guess I should say that that's at WordPress. So
WordPress.com.
At WordPress.com. Yeah. So.
Well, we'll definitely point people there, and now you told me that you just started listening to podcasts here just a few weeks ago. So you're on one right away. So that's pretty neat.
I know, it happened so fast. My son, my sweet 17-year-old son, came home and said, "Hey, Mom, I think you would enjoy listening to podcasts." And I'm going, "Podcast? What is a podcast?" And so he was trying to explain. He said, no, just go to iTunes and just search on homesteading. I bet you'll find some. And And so now it's like, what would I do without this podcast? While I'm sitting there milking or weeding or doing whatever I'm doing, I'm listening to a podcast, and it's really enjoying it. So.
Yeah, well, that's great. Now you can brag and say, well, not only did I listen to him, I'm on one. So
I'm on one.
But that's great. That's great. Yeah. Well, hey, I'm gonna let you go, but it's been really great having you on here today.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you having me on.
There you have it, folks, our interview with Heather Eby. Make sure you head on over to her blog and tell her we sent you and how much you enjoyed hearing about her homestead. Remember, you can check out the show notes for this episode at smalltownhomestead.com/004. And until next time, God bless you and happy homesteading.
Thanks for listening. To see the show notes for this podcast or listen to other podcast episodes, go to smalltownhomestead.com. There you can also read our blog, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, and take advantage of the many resources we make available to help you along in your homesteading journey. Please share this podcast and help us to carry out our mission of helping others to homestead today for a better tomorrow.